Thanks for joining us, you guys. I'm going to turn off my camera and my mic for now and hand it over to everybody else. I also just wanted to introduce Jeanette. Jeanette, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. My name is Jeanette Matusiak, and I am the director of the collaborative of the SCFD. I represent Tier 1 and Tier 2 SCFD funded organizations, and I will be helping Kelly field the Q&A at the end of our meeting today. So thanks so much for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And this is handing it off to you, Deborah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see we've got so many people on the call from around the state. We really appreciate everything. I want to start by first saying we truly appreciate how much the organizations and creative businesses are doing for our state and for the nation. You are doing an awesome job and will continue to do cheerleading. We can only imagine how challenging this is, but really appreciate it. So today's webinar is a collaboration with the Colorado Office of Film, Media, and Television, Colorado Creative Industries, the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts, the Collaborative of the SCFD, you just met Jeanette, and the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, the SCFD. We're joined by well over close to 200 people today, and it'll be a 1-hour panel discussion from experts in the field, and then we'll open it up for Q&A because we really want to hear what your thoughts are. We obviously know this is an extremely challenging time with the stay-at-home order and the safety-at-home order, the challenges for all of our venues and our organizations. So I'm going to turn it over. First I'll introduce our panelists, Susan Wrubel, who is the Executive Director and Artistic Director of Aspen Film and Aspen Shorts, Paul Lhevine, who is the CEO of Swallow Home Music, and Rachel Bayse, the Director of the Art Students League. So they're going to get into answering some very specific or general questions to start with the challenges their organizations are facing, ideas on asset and capital preservation and others. So I'm going to turn it over to Susan to start the dialogue. Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks so much for having me. So I am, as Deborah said, Executive and Artistic Director at Aspen Film, and Aspen Film produces 3 pretty big for Aspen film festivals a year. And we were most recently executing our Oscar qualifying short film festival from March 31st through April 5th. And on Thursday, March 12th, we were forced to make the decision that we needed to pull the plug on our traditional Shorts Fest, which would have taken place at the historic Wheeler Opera House in downtown Aspen. The Wheeler is a venue that we use for our 3 annual festivals, 450 seat auditorium. And that morning, we found out that the Opera House was being forced to close and cancel programming. So we had spoken sort of as a team. We're a very small team of about 4.5 women. We had spoken in advance because we sort of suspected rumblings at the beginning of the week that we may need to do a quick pivot. We did a quick board call that day once we knew that things were definitely happening. And we all made a decision that if we could very quickly execute our Shorts Fest online, we were going to proceed doing that. So we made the decision on a Thursday. We did a couple of reach outs on Friday. Our programmer for Shorts Fest is based in Toronto. He also programs for the Toronto International Film Festival and was sort of in disbelief that we were even having this conversation. So he and I started putting our heads together a little bit and realized that if we could find the right partner to host our festival, we would be fine, because we just knew that as a very small organization with the infrastructure that we have or don't have, we were not going to be able to put our 71 film festival on the sort of wobbly Aspen Film website. So my colleague and I had seen an announcement in one of the film trade publications that a platform out of Paris called Festival Scope was executing a Danish documentary festival, and it was sort of announced that next Friday the 13th. So we reached out to them. We had a call with them the following Tuesday. We talked through all of our needs. They had never done a US, or I should say North American-based festival before, and they'd never done a complete festival. Normally what Festival Scope does is sort of take highlights from other festivals, primarily throughout Europe, and would sort of offer the highlights on their website, and you could do it with a paywall or not. And we talked through with them what we needed, that we had these 71 short films that we needed to get every filmmaker to agree that they would show their film online. and could they help us? So they came back to us with a proposal. We made a deal with them and decided that we wanted to maintain our ticketing component through our theater here in Aspen, the Wheeler Opera House. They have a ticketing service called Aspen Showtix. So we were able to preserve that relationship with Showtix so they could somehow still participate in the whole event. And Festival Scope got everything on the platform. We basically had to deliver files to them with each individual film program. And we were able to keep our original dates, which is a big deal for us because we didn't want to have to revise our marketing. So basically, we had a conversation on Tuesday, I think it was the 17th of March. We delivered everything to them the following Tuesday, which I believe was the 24th. And we launched the festival on the 31st. So it was kind of incredible that within, 2 weeks and change, we did a full pivot. Our marketing team, who is based out of Texas, they're called Solo Shoe Communications. They do all the marketing and PR for the Wheeler Opera House as well. We had sort of kept them in step with us the whole time through. We also had a social media person, Vols Media, who's out of Georgetown, Colorado. We all worked as a really solid team, crafting all the messaging in the language, and we did the majority of this through social media and e-blasts. I'm proud to say that we had a lot of success. We ended up selling passes to the full festival, which was 9 programs over 6 days. And we also sold individual program access codes. I think we had over 900 people purchasing and viewing altogether, including our members who, if they were members at a certain level, had comp passes to the whole festival. And, between our media and sponsors, but we did have over 900 people viewing. We were able to do this nationwide, which was phenomenal because normally when Aspen hosts a festival, it's really local. Here and there, we'll get people coming in. The Boulder film people have been incredibly supportive and they usually come in. But we really saw that through our e-blast lists. We have a lot of second homeowners in Aspen. So we were seeing a lot of people in California and Texas and the Chicago area and New York buying access codes for different programs and for the full festival. So ultimately, we were thrilled with the results. We did have a couple of hurdles that in retrospect, I'm thinking, oh, of course, why wouldn't we have thought of that? But it's one of those situations you don't know what you don't know. And the fact that we were able to turn this around and execute within 2 weeks' time, we're all incredibly proud of. And we ended up doing very well revenue-wise because we didn't have to pay venue costs. So it turned out to be a happy accident for us. We are now looking down the road. Well, the other thing I'll say is that one of the greatest things about doing Shorts Fest online, and this was one of the main reasons that we proceeded taking the festival online, was that as an Oscar qualifying film festival, we needed to find out from the Academy whether or not taking this online, we would still be an Oscar qualifier in 5 categories. So traditionally, if our juries award, or whatever film is awarded by our juries in animation, comedy, documentary, drama, and student short, those films go on for Oscar contention if they win a grand prize here. So the Academy said that as long as we did our festival as a private festival and it was not available online to just anybody, we still qualified. So our jury of 3 all agreed to work remotely. We had 1 woman in Paris. We had a journalist out of Los Angeles and another producer out of New York. They watched everything remotely. They adjudicated on awards in 2 different sessions along with our programmer. And we were able to present a total of 9 awards, 6 of them competitive, 1 audience award, a youth jury prize, and then our founder, Ellen Hunt, also gives an award called the Ellen Award. So 6 of the 9 were Oscar qualifiers, and we were just so thrilled that we were able to carry on in traditional fashion. And actually it's 5 that are Oscar qualifiers. We have 1 other category that is not a qualifier. So our next festival coming up is in September, which is our big film fest, which is usually a lot of the fall highlight films that are coming from anywhere from Sundance to Cannes to Venice, Telluride, Toronto. And we're in a little bit of a holding pattern right now, waiting to see what social distancing is going to look like. Will we be allowed back in the Wheeler Opera House? If so, at what capacity? And we traditionally worked at the Wheeler for our evening screenings and a smaller multiplex in town called the ISIS. But the ISIS still hasn't opened. So we're sitting in a weird holding pattern, as I said, right now, because we don't know what the future is going to bring. So we're looking to either push from September into October to give ourselves a little bit more runway, or possibly figure out, would we do another online festival with feature films, which I'm not sure about, because we don't know what's going to be available, or are we going to roll the dice and try to push it out further? So I'm sure these are questions that a lot of other organizations are facing right now, and it's literally a week by week conversation at this point.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful. I think we'll get into some of the questions related to your comments a little bit later, but I'm going to turn it over to Paul right now to talk about Swallow Hill.
That's great. I'm Paul Lhevine, CEO of Swallow Hill Music. We're the country's second largest acoustic music school. We have 70 amazing teachers. We had about 70,000 visits, 70,000 visits to our music school last year. We also produced, every year we produce about 250 concerts, bringing together about another 65,000 concert goers. We operate in 100, 500, 300 seat rooms. We also run and have run for the last decade the Denver Botanic Gardens Summer Concert Series, where we host 2,500 patrons for about 14 shows during the summer. And then we run outreach programs. We run programming in preschools, in about 30 preschools, working with about 2,000 preschoolers in our underserved communities in a weekly formal program, 30-minute program. We do programming with our adult community, with our senior community, and then we do programming with veterans. Clearly, everything that we do in person has been put on hold, and we pivoted pretty quickly to exploring online programs like everybody else in the world. We are still trying to figure our way through that because there is so much free content available, so many amazing musicians, world-class artists that are putting free content online. We haven't quite figured out how we can go about charging for kind of the folk genre, Americana genres that we specialize in. We've been doing free programming with online tip jars. One of our shows, we raised $1,200, and we thought that was pretty successful, and we're going to continue to explore those avenues, how we can maybe make our programming a little bit more exclusive just for members, or bring in some higher level artists who may be able to do some fairly inexpensive or free programming for our audience members. We're in a holding pattern as we're trying to figure out what the guidance is for the summer, what the guidance is for groups of 10 or more or 50 or more. We are prepared at this point to open back our school. We have 21 classrooms, but it all depends on again, what that guidance is and how many people we can fit in our facility at any one time. We've run a worst case scenario through the next 12 months that if we don't raise another penny, if we don't earn another penny, about 75-80% of what we do annually is through earned revenue. If we don't earn another penny, either through our concert or our music school, we have a 12-month runway that we can see ourselves clear to, and that's a great place to be in. But on the first week, we took 3 austerity measures. We had to lay off all of our teachers. We got PPP, and so we've been able to hire all of our teachers back for the next 2 months. We had to lay off our box office and front desk staff members. We've been able to hire those folks back. And we did have to make a round of layoffs for administrators. We're down to, we pared down 7 administrative positions. And those positions probably won't be coming back. And so we're figuring out how to do the same jobs we've been doing with less people, and you know, trying to plan as many scenarios as we can without you know, just spinning our wheels endlessly. And that's where we are right now.
Thank you, Paul. That's very informative, and we'll get into more details. Rachel, what are you all up to?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Bayse. I'm the Executive Director at the Art Students League of Denver. We are a program that offers a lot of art programs taught by professional artists. We have 150 professional artists on our faculty, and we, in a normal time, would have close to 900 students through our doors every month. That's all ages and abilities. And we, like everyone else, learned on March 16th that it wasn't going to be feasible to continue offering those in-person classes. So we spent that week kind of closing down everything here that was happening in person. So we now have a team of 9 people who are working remotely at reduced hours currently to try to figure out where we go from here. And what we've accomplished so far is we are also offering courses virtually now. We are doing all of that through Zoom. We have faculty who have been really willing to jump in and learn this new technique and figure out how to adapt their classes to work within a different time frame. And we have some great volunteers who've stepped forward to help us figure out how to maximize Zoom. I also want to just share, once again, I'm always impressed with what a great community we have. Other organizations who are more adept at Zoom, particularly Lighthouse Writers Workshop, was really, really key in helping us figure out what we could do to make sure that our instructors had the infrastructure there. And we are now focused on what we're going to do for this summer. We have a really large outdoor art market that normally takes place in June. We know it's not going to be happening in June. We don't know if and when it will happen. We're working with the city about offering it later this summer, but we understand they, like we, are looking at everything on kind of a week-to-week and month-to-month basis. So we're just really working hard to communicate with all of the artists who've already applied and been accepted into that event on what we know and what we don't know, and we're committing to them to be completely transparent as things unfold. And we're prepared to need to give back funds if the new dates don't work for them, or if it's just not something that they're still interested in participating in. We've spent the last few weeks going through a lot of refunds with people for courses. When we stopped courses in March, we weren't really sure how long that was going to be, and our session runs through the end of May. And so at that time, we emailed all of our students and said, as things unfolded, we would let them know if we would be able to reschedule things, but it's become apparent we just won't have the capacity to reschedule things. So we're going through the difficulty now of contacting everyone and offering refunds. We've been incredibly grateful to the number of people who've been willing to offer a portion or all of their course fees to us as donations to help us keep going, which has been just amazing. We have reached out to many of our foundation supporters and individual supporters and asked them if they had restricted donations to us, if they would be willing to consider lifting those restrictions. And again, we're incredibly grateful that many of them are. We've shared with them that, you know, if and when we can continue those programs moving forward, we of course will, but in the meantime, just trying to shore up funds to get through this difficult period, having those restrictions lifted is really important for us. We've also taken a look at everything in the building, just in terms of asset and capital preservation. What are things that we can put on hold? We obviously did one really big deep clean when we shut it down, and now we've put a hiatus on our cleaning company, and we're preparing for when we reopen, that we do see those expenses are probably going to go up quite significantly, because we'll have to have, you know, additional and more in-depth cleaning on a regular basis than we usually do. We are thinking about summer camp. We offer summer camp spaces for 1,350 kids every year starting June 1st. And we're, again, just before this, I know many of us were on a call with the governor's office, and we still don't have clear guidance on that. We understand that. So again, we're just communicating frequently and openly with the parents who've already registered kids for summer camp on what we know and what we don't know. And in the meantime, we're thinking about how we might offer a combination of in-person and online summer camps, and how we can get our faculty members prepared for that, how we can provide supplies, how could those kits be available for families to pick up ahead of time if courses were online. And we're looking at exhibits. We have a biennial exhibit, Delectable, that is tabletop ceramics. We have it's a national juried show. All of that artwork came in at the beginning of March, and we were in the midst of opening everything and making sure all the pieces had arrived okay, and starting to enter it for labeling and all of that. And now I'm surrounded by, I'm at the league today, so I'm surrounded by beautiful ceramics that we don't have on display, but we're trying to figure out if we can turn that into an online exhibit and sale. And so we're really, like everyone, I think, just looking at all of the different opportunities and possibilities that come out of this to keep things going. And like Paul, we're running worst case scenarios on our finances. How long do we think we could continue if if none of these things happened this summer, if we had to cancel SAM, if we had no camps that we could offer and we needed to refund all of that revenue that we've already taken in. Similarly to Swallow Hill, 65 to 70% of our revenue is earned income. And so we are really trying to figure out what we do if we can't continue to have that level of earned income. And to me, it's not only about, I know for all of us, it's not only about when we can reopen, but also what is going to make our community members feel comfortable coming back to in-person events. And so we're looking at different surveys, and for instance, with summer camp, we've been talking about what are the questions that we want to ask parents to ensure that we're creating an infrastructure, if they choose to come in person, that they will feel like their children are safe here. And we also recognize that there may be some people who will just say, this isn't the year for us. So we're trying to balance with camp. We know that there are a number of people who sign up for camp as daycare, and we also want to be here for families where parents are now going back to work and they were relying on us for that daycare. We don't want to leave them in a lurch. So I just feel like there are so many moving pieces that we're all dealing with all the time, that there are days where I feel like I make a plan and an hour later, that plan is just not worth anything anymore.
Right. Thank you, Rachel. I think it is the unpredictability of the pandemic, and starting from a health standpoint, that's the first priority for our staff and our community, and then but the unpredictability in terms of timing and being on hold. I want to talk a little bit about, if we can, and you all have addressed some of it, if there are other preserving assets, you're talking about that, fundraising, everyone's trying to get donations online if possible. But Susan, it's interesting. You've been able to reach people nationally, and I think for both Rachel and Paul, it's more of and I'll let them speak to this, it's more of a regional and local audience. Are there any tips to help organizations think about opening up to a more national audience online? So it starts with Susan. I just pass it off to you guys.
No, I mean, I think logically, film is something that brings people together. And since you can't have people in an auditorium together having these shared experiences in the dark, you're trying to offer them something in their own homes. And, I think part of the nature of our community is that we have so many second homeowners and people are dispersed around the country. So our mailing list lends itself to that. Because we were able to make something available online, and for an individual program, it was $10 and $7.50 for our members. There wasn't a huge barrier to entry. It's very easy. The hardest part was actually accessing your access code. And then you plug it in and you can watch, and the programs were about, 90 minutes. So that's a very easy thing to do. We're trying to figure out as well what to do with our education programs. One part of Shorts Fest and even our Film Fest that we do traditionally, there's a massive education component called Film Educates, which is a learning program that we try to do throughout the year. Shorts Fest is normally when we do the most robust programming, because we have filmmakers from around the world here who we are able to actually bring into classrooms. So we normally operate from, say, Aspen to Rifle or Aspen to Parachute. We usually have a group of students from Denver it's an arts high school, and they often present their work to filmmakers that visit. So unfortunately, we weren't able to do anything like that. We also had another student group from Austin that's been coming. Those obviously couldn't happen because we couldn't do anything in person. But one of our other programs, which is called Making Movies Matter, is a program where we would provide area teachers with either DVDs or flash drives of films that had an educational component to them that were all sort of curated based on age group. And my education colleagues figured out a way to not partner, but to use Vimeo and password protected links. So we're now launching our Making Movies Matter program online. The great thing about this is that we don't have to worry about only operating from Aspen to Rifle or Denver at this point, because we can make those available to teachers around the country. It's more of a PR challenge at this point, but it sounds specifically like both of you have unique programs. I mean, Paul, you in particular, that if you could broaden out your e-blast base or something, I have a feeling there are people around the country that would love this, especially if you're, you know, the second largest in the country that does what you do. I think it's just a question of getting the messaging out there. I mean, the good thing about this pandemic is that we're not necessarily limited by location anymore. You know, it's not like, you know, there are a lot of things, and I look at a lot of what, you know, Jeanette, your organization does. We are in a county that doesn't really fit into your mandate, but because of all of this, we're now able to participate and have conversations with you because the distances don't really make a difference.
Exactly.
As we've been putting some of our programming, some of our music school online, a few months ago before the closure, one of our beloved teachers left, you know, picked up his home to go to California. Well, now as a music teacher, we could in fact plug him back in for our online programming and get into that community out in California. So absolutely, I think it's to go online means the world is your audience, and then it's just about how do you get the message out there to attract people.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what we're working on now. So with the online courses that we've started through our social media, we've really expanded what we're doing on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And we're starting to see that those numbers ratchet up, and we're anticipating that we'll see more people from across the country who are taking some of those classes, as opposed to just the people who are in Colorado.
Great. You touched on it, but maybe you could speak to both the hurdles with technology and the opportunities with technology.
Well, I think we've covered what the opportunities are. Obviously, they allow us to reach people wherever they may be. And also, we don't have to have instructors even in our physical location in order to be teaching. They can be teaching from their home studios. Which gives a great opportunity for people to see into those studios. That's always exciting and interesting. We've run into situations, though, some of the hurdles are people have different levels of internet quality. So, you know, sometimes we've had instructors who've been more than willing to teach out of their studios, but they just don't have great internet connections. So we've been trying to come up with ways to help them troubleshoot that. Not everybody has quality cameras, either on the student side or on the instructor side. So we've even been looking at, are there ways that, you know, over time, if we continue in this model, could we have some equipment, certainly for instructors, where they could borrow equipment from us to help them ensure the quality of the experience for the people who are watching the class. And then really learning Zoom and the number of accounts that you need. I mean, at the beginning, we had situations where we had people, we might have had a class scheduled, and then an instructor who had a class coming up later who wanted to jump on early and test something out. And if we weren't making sure they knew that the other class was there, they could inadvertently bump someone off. So just making sure that, you know, that we have a master schedule and everyone's looking at the schedule, and they're all surmountable problems. It's really just about remembering that there are lots of different moving parts and who has the master calendar that we're looking at.
Sure.
For Swallow Hill, Zoom is the kind of go-to platform, but with a 1.2 second delay, or whatever that delay is, music instruction is incredibly difficult. Group classes, which is really our forte, we bring community together through our group classes. You know, we could demonstrate it by all singing a song together here, but it would be nightmarish. And so you know, we are trying to figure out, you know, how do we make those classes really run in a way that's not just overly clunky. And right now, people are signing up for classes with our teachers, really on a one-to-one basis. But even our teachers who get together on a group call every week, the number one thing they talk about is how clunky the platform is, and it's the same platform that the Old Town School of Folk in Chicago uses, and that's the single biggest acoustic music school in the country. And they have maybe 5% of all of their programming online right now. And that, I think, demonstrates just how difficult it is for music classes to be, you know, kind of at the level of quality that keeps people coming back to more programming.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you hit on it. I mean, a lot of it is the quality that everyone has learned to love and about Swallow Hill. Yeah, Paul, have you thought at all about, and it's really more for you all in terms of live broadcast concerts or any other beyond classes programming that you sometimes do?
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out right now. So far, we've been doing live Facebook feeds with local artists. We will get no fewer than about 40 or 50 people at any given moment watching our Facebook feeds. We get 4,000 or 5,000 views past that, which is, you know, pretty great. We've had some really spectacular world-class artists who have said that they would love to, you know, be a part of something that we're doing. And so we just haven't quite figured out how to tap into that to make it really special. You know, I think one of the things that we see in late night programming now is, you know, interviewing with great, you know, artists and actors and musicians that brings this level of intimacy, right? When you see John Legend, you know, doing an interview from his couch, it just brings a different level of intimacy. And how do you tap into that to that special quality to really propel your work forward?
Sure, that's a great aspect because it's the intimacy, but it's also personalizing people in a way that audiences haven't seen before. You know, what's their backdrop? Their kids are behind them. The dog comes in. All those things that you know on stage you wouldn't see. So it's a whole level. You're right, of intimacy. Do we want to talk a little bit more about? Well, I know there are many organizations that have a facility, so they have a higher overhead, more staff, a physical plant. And Rachel and Paul, maybe speak to that in terms of how you're managing that and any guidance or just thoughts on helping other organizations. As Paul, you said, you kind of cut right out the gate things off, but from a physical standpoint and larger staff perspective. Any thoughts?
Rachel, do you want to go first?
Well, I think I shared, we have, you know, all of the building, we terminated our building management contract, or basically we put it on hiatus until we would have be open on a regular basis again. We worked with our landscape company to delay when they were going to start a little bit, but obviously, you know, we don't want the yard area to die or to really just be a total disaster. So we just pushed it back a little bit, but they'll be starting the sprinklers up, I think this weekend actually. So we will have that expense still moving forward. And then the cleaning company, as I said, we renegotiated with them, cut way down until, again, we're back in the facility. We are fortunate in that we have 2 students who live very close to our location. And so we reached out to them to ask them if they would be kind enough to do a walk by a couple times a week and just let us know if they saw anything. I mean, we have a security company, but we just wanted to know if you know, there were any problems at the building. We did have some graffiti on one of our walls and they let us know about that. So we were able to get that taken care of right away, but it's just nice to have someone, you know, keep eyes on the building. We've been taking turns, those of us who are still working remotely, coming over once a week just to make sure everything's okay. I mean, we've worked with our bank, actually. This is a big one. We do have a small mortgage on our building, and we've gotten a 6-month deferral on that. So that bought us some time there as we're figuring things out. I can't think of anything else at the moment specifically. I mean, I think all of our buildings are somewhat different and unique and quirky. So
I would just say, yeah, no, well, Paul, go ahead. Sorry.
No, we did most of what Rachel's done. Unfortunately, we got a 3-month deferral on mortgage, not a 6-month. But our building's quiet. We have our building maintenance technician who goes on a regular basis just to make sure everything's fine. But we put most of our contracts, we've renegotiated or put most of our contracts to sleep. We're sitting on 3 performance spaces, 21 classrooms, 20,000 square feet. And now we're trying to figure out, what does the building look like when we reopen? Can we reopen and do it in a way that allows social distancing? So one-way hallways instead of our lobby where people can wait for classes. We would probably open up our 300-seat hall to give people in family groups 6 feet apart. Staggering classroom start times, in maybe not every classroom, maybe it's every other classroom. So we're trying to figure that out. But again, without guidance, we're just shut down.
Sure, I understand. Well, there'll be a lot more. I know there's so many people working at it at the state level, a national level, a state level, a county level, city levels. There's a lot of people at work. So this is a little quirky, but they've been opening. There's guidance for churches. Have you all ever considered, or could you do a parking lot concert, or if it was allowed? I know churches are now doing things, services in parking lots. Paul, you've got a parking lot. Would you ever consider doing a class or performances in the parking lot? Or is it cost effective?
Maybe.
There are innovative ideas coming out there. I don't know.
Sure. There's also decibel level, noise restrictions in neighborhoods. And we're surrounded by houses. And so that might be a tricky thing to do, although it might be an interesting thing. Yeah.
I just think it's interesting ideas people are coming up with around the country, knowing that the social distancing and small gatherings are in place, and at least through May, and determining when that goes forward. So are there any burning issues that any of you all want to address before we open it up for questions? Anything that we haven't touched on?
Not that we haven't touched on, but I just wanted to add to the whole parking lot philosophy. We're looking into actually creating a drive-in movie theater in a parking lot. So even
they all went away. No.
What?
It's too bad they all went away.
Yeah. So this is something that keeps coming up. It's a lot of heavy lifting, but we've identified a pretty ample sized parking lot that, we could do something controlled. And we're just looking into the setup cost right now and how we would actually get projection and the screen and all of that. The great thing about that is that we don't have to worry about social distancing as much because people will be in their cars. Right. And the sound for the film will be piped in through FM radio. So I know that there's a lot of enthusiasm around that within the community. And I think that there are other groups that want it to be even larger and something that we can try to sustain throughout the summer.
Wonderful, thank you. And I appreciate Rachel and Paul, you talking to your banks, because there's so many other things that organizations can do in terms of deferred payments and on the financial side, that I think the main thing is just keep reaching out and talking to people. All they can say is no or later. So I would just encourage people to keep doing that. So I think at this point, unless there's any other burning thoughts, Jeanette's on, and Jeanette and Kelly are here. They're going to, they're going to field questions from the Q&A. So
yes, sounds good. Cool, thank you guys so much. I'm seeing that my hair is a little crazy right now. I'm going to start with the question that we got in advance, and then Jeanette and I are going to tag team some of the ones coming in. So just a reminder for you guys out there, you can type in your questions to the Q&A box below, and we'll read them out loud as we go along. So I think we all discussed this question a little bit before we got on board, but I'll just reiterate, from the Baroque Chamber Orchestra of Colorado. Their full question is, they focus on live performance. We're currently retooling to offer more of our music online now and do live stream eventually. We plan to offer some streaming only or streaming as one option for concerts in the fall. As development staff, I'd like to know more about how best to use a streaming concert as a revenue generator. What are the pros and cons and technical considerations? So, anybody?
Paul, any thoughts on that, Paul?
You know, we're trying to figure that out. If we had, say, for instance, if we had a Judy Collins level artist who was going to do something for us, we would probably consider doing that only for members to help drive membership up as a way, as a first point of entry. Again, we've done, we've raised some money with just the tip jar, the online tip jar. And we're trying to figure out how do we do more work consistently. If we had a Swallow Hill music hour online every day, 7 days a week, might that start to drive, a little bit more consistent behavioral changes in our audience, in our patrons. I think we're trying to figure out, like a lot of other folks, especially given the consideration that there is so much free music out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is challenging. I know one program in Denver for the larger audience is the Denver Film Society has partnered with DoorDash and is doing movie and a dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about, are there unique partnerships that could be formed out of non-arts organizations that you could partner with? So that's just a more of a comment for right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next question?
Great. I'm actually going to jump ahead, Kelly, on one question, since this sort of dovetails with the one that you just asked. I think there's a lot of folks who have some digital platform questions, so we can kind of stick to that for right now. A person is sharing that they're transitioning their theater performance to video and want to use it as a fundraiser. And they were just wondering what other types of platforms that people are using or hearing about. It's new to them. And so has anyone heard about other platforms or, like Paul, can you talk a little bit about how you create your tip jar? What app are you using? Can you speak a little bit to that first?
Oh, that's a big technical question. I don't know, Deborah, I don't know if there's a way to get answers back out to all participants. But we can certainly, formulate that answer and get it out for everybody.
Yeah, I would just say that there are probably a lot of tech questions that is way over my pay grade. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities that maybe we can share some technology, new tips on technology as a resource with a group later.
And the only thing I would add is that people should look into Vimeo as well. That's a good, if you have recorded things that you want people then to access for a fee, Vimeo is the way to go.
Vimeo is great. We partner with them. They're one of our partners for Shorts Fest. They've traditionally given an award the last 3 years, and we've been working with them a lot. As I said, for our education program, they're offering to help us out with that. They also, they do something called Vimeo OTT, which is one of their Vimeo on-demand services. And there are a lot of different levels of service. A lot of it's DIY, where you sign up for a Vimeo service and you can upload things yourselves. And their customer service is phenomenal. I highly recommend them as well.
Great. Thank you, Susan.
Great. Kelly, I'll start with the next question and then we can alternate. Can you guys speak to a little bit about how you're implementing or working on keeping your virtual programming accessible?
Do you mean accessible financially or accessible technologically?
Great question. I would say technologically first, if you can address that. Like you were talking a little bit about cameras and some people having, different levels of Wi-Fi or equipment. Can you talk a little bit about your planning around that?
Sure. For us, that's something I think we're learning a little bit about as we go. So again, we're fortunate in that we have some of our faculty members are really very savvy technologically and have, great setups with multiple cameras, and they've been willing to help us and other faculty members learn from that. And so we're in the midst of looking at acquiring some additional cameras and equipment that we would have available for faculty members to borrow. But we're also learning, because we're teaching art classes, and there's really something to be, the faculty members need to see what students are working on as well. And sometimes based on the quality of cameras or lighting in a room, it's really hard to see the work remotely and offer constructive criticism, because maybe the colors look off than they would if you were seeing it in person. So we've been just this week having conversations about moving forward. If we really continue to expand this, do we need to include a very inexpensive light on a supply list that students could have, that is they're showing their work to an instructor remotely, they're trying to offset the lighting in their room in a way so that things look the same. So there's just some things that we're learning as we go on that. But we also don't, getting back to keeping it accessible financially, we don't want to require that students have to have crazy setups with really high quality cameras as well. We want people who may be working on their iPad to still feel like it's an accessible class to them. So we're trying to balance both sides to that.
Yeah, and I just want to add that someone's clarifying in the Q&A, our last question that just came in, that perhaps the accessibility is also regarding folks of various abilities, including captioning or offering sign languages or using alt text to describe still images. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well, Rachel?
Sure. So we're also getting comfortable. Zoom has a feature with closed captioning that we're learning about and getting comfortable with as well, and looking into more capabilities there.
Great. Kelly, do you want to take the next question, unless Paul or Susan, you want to add into any of that Rachel shared?
Yeah. For us, it's a little bit different because we're not necessarily looking for the live, real-time streaming events that Rachel and Paul are. So we're investigating different platforms that can best host our streaming needs. What we learned from Shorts Fest is that a lot of people were very confused. First of all, having to buy tickets in one place and then go to another platform that they had never heard of to actually watch everything. And I think essentially people just assumed, oh, we're going to log into the Aspen Film website, click a button and see what we want. So that was a massive hurdle. I think, as Rachel was saying, that people have different levels of experience or internet or whatever. We're also dealing a lot in this community with people's technological levels. And a lot of people are just not familiar with this. A lot of people don't go on Netflix. Certain people only use an iPad. So we're trying to streamline that. We are likely going to be doing an award winner screening of our Shorts Fest films around Memorial Day. We're going to be doing that on Vimeo through our own platform because it's easier. And we will be announcing very soon that we're launching a new film that the distributor Neon has coming out called Spaceship Earth. And they're doing a May 8th launch of this film around the country with theaters and other institutions. So that's the way they're handling it, is they're working with Vimeo OTT to do this, and we will get a distinct link. So we'll e-blast that out to people, and people can actually click that link through an email from us that takes them right to the whole setup page. So again, it's a little bit different because we're not doing live time, but it's definitely a consideration for us because we need to make things as easy and as transparent as possible for our viewers. With this Spaceship Earth screening, we're partnering with the Aspen Institute. We collaborate on a doc series with them called the Eisner-Lauter New Views Documentary and Dialogue Series. So a big part of that is how you do a dialogue after the film, and can we get that dialogue tacked on to the end of the film? So we're looking at doing a pre-recorded Q&A with talent from the movie, for the reason that it's a lot easier for people to actually have that pop up on a Vimeo link once the film is done, rather than having to tune in elsewhere and to host some clunky Zoom or Facebook Live kind of thing. So we're looking into that to streamline the whole process and make it easier.
Great, thanks, Susan.
Yep.
That's awesome, thank you for that. I will go ahead and start asking the next question about relief funds. What has your experience of applying for relief funds set up by private foundations been? Have you guys done that, and can you speak to that process a little bit? Any takers? Anybody done it?
We applied for the PPP. That's all we've applied for. Other than what I shared, we have approached funders that we had. Well, and we're in the midst of, we're working on our application right now for the NEA CARES funds, but we haven't heard on that one yet. So I don't know that I have much more to share.
Okay.
We submitted a regular NEA application and considered applying for the NEA CARES, but also applied for the SBA PPP loan and were successful in receiving some money there. In terms of the NEA, it looks like there had to be a separate project that you were applying for in a program. And we just felt that the application that we had submitted back in February was the program that we were really looking for support on, and didn't really think it was fair for us to try to reach out a second time because we didn't really have a legitimate second program. We will be applying for the CCI COVID-19 grant, which I believe was just, the deadline was just pushed to June. And, we were very fortunate that within our community, the city has granted some rent relief on publicly owned buildings where, as a nonprofit arts organization, we all get a little bit of a break, but they're giving us a little bit of a credit for the next 3 months. So that was wonderful. And we also know that within the community, they're looking at some other arts relief funding through our Chamber of Commerce and possibly one other place. But nationally, we haven't really found anything. And I think as a presenting arts organization, the way we're set up, maybe a little bit different from Rachel and Paul's organizations, which are doing live events and live time classes. This community, I know, really has need for social services and lunch programs and students and people that just really need money to survive. So we've taken, I don't want to say we've taken a back seat, but we've felt that until those people are really cared for and taken care of, we kind of need to make do with what we've got and just rein it in a little bit. And we just executed a festival where we had sent out a giving letter in advance. We will probably do another just separate giving letter over the summer once some of the larger arts organizations have executed what they're doing, because we don't really focus on summer programming, just the way our cycle works.
Great.
Okay.
Great. I'm just going to pass us on to another question because we have quite a few to go through. Somebody is asking about summer camps and that they have classes for young students, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and they're wondering how to make online classes successful, especially because at this age level, they probably need parents to assist them on the online platform, and parents might not be available. I have heard others share about a mixture of pre-recorded material and some live material. Do you guys want to share a little bit about how you're thinking about pre-recorded versus live for online classes really in general, but this is specific to a young age group?
Well, I'll share we're working on exactly those same issues right now, so I don't know that I have great answers yet. We've reached out to all of the faculty, as I said, who have summer camps planned, and we are working with them to figure out what is the best situation for whatever their media and area of focus is. And some of them are saying that they feel like a mixture of pre-recorded and live will be best. The other issue is that all of our summer camps are 3 hours in length every day for 5 days, which we recognize is not going to work online. So it's not only a matter of should it be pre-recorded and live, but also what's the right length and how do we ensure that we're creating a situation where the material that was in the original camp description can be covered. So I guess I don't have a great answer other than to say we're grappling with exactly the same situation, and certainly whoever that person is, I'm happy to share as we learn and figure out what we're doing moving forward, but I don't have all of those answers today.
Great, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. Kelly, do you want to grab the next one?
I do, and this one is about fundraising, and I want to read the full thing because I think it's nice. But at the end, there's a fundraising question. So at the Butterfly Pavilion, we moved quickly to create an emergency fund for animal care and employee assistance, which has exceeded our fundraising expectations. Our community has rallied around this, and we have seen a tremendous increase in new donors and reactivated donors. So what are you all doing differently on the fundraising front? Can you speak to that at all? Go for it.
It's not a lot. As I said, you know, we sent out a giving letter before Shorts Fest, so we feel like we now sit back, and I know that there are other nonprofit arts organizations that have summer plans, so we're kind of letting them take the next lead. But one thing we did with our Shorts Fest program was that we set up a Filmmaker Fund through Aspen Showtix. So when people were purchasing tickets to our different programs, they had the ability to donate $1, $3, $5, $25, $50, $100 to filmmakers. So we were able to raise a little bit of money in the Filmmaker Fund. It didn't come out to be a huge amount of money per filmmaker because we had so many films that we showed. But people, the filmmakers just really greatly appreciated our effort. And the majority of them offered to donate their $20 that they would have been receiving. And I think most of it is going to the CCI COVID-19 fund. A couple of other people asked for their donations to go to funds that feed people and that sort of thing, but everybody was pretty great about it. And we're really looking into it down the road. I think for us, because we don't have a big summer event, we don't feel comfortable asking right now. But we will, once we have a sense of what our fall festival looks like, we'll probably do a summer reach out in that regard.
One-on-one calls with donors. That's the #1 best way to raise the bigger dollars. The more we're in front of our audience online, the more we can kind of continue to keep our brand out in front of people. Emails, but there's a lot of noise in the system, and especially in the first 3 weeks, we noticed, you know, people were not focused on giving; they were focused on their health and safety. Now that we're kind of into this thing and kind of past that first phase, you know, I think it's a whole new ball game. But it's not easy, and so the more effort you can put into it, the bigger the payoff. But it's really one-on-one phone calls.
Thank you. Jeanette, do you want to do this two-part question?
Yes. So two-part question here is, are you concerned that with the new emphasis on online services will train your audiences to stay at home? Or do you feel like this is also a new opportunity to build a new level of programming in the future?
At Swallow Hill, our audience tends to be a little older. Average age of a concert goer is probably around 55 for us. I don't think we're training our audience to stay at home. I think our audience is going to stay at home. I think we're going to find a lot of audience members who, over the next 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months, aren't going to feel as comfortable coming out and doing things. And so, you know, we're building a program for the long haul. It's not just for the immediate future. I think that until we really have a vaccine, until we all feel really safe coming out, and we don't. Every poll says we don't feel safe right now. And so I don't think we're training our audience. I think we're adapting to the behavioral changes that we're going to see in our audience.
Rachel or Susan, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I was going to say I would completely agree with that. We know that we have rabid viewers here. And since we can't get into movie theaters and we don't know when we'll get into movie theaters, and since our local multiplex, you know, has 156 seats in their big house, we have no idea what that looks like going into the summer. So we're just finding that being able to offer something is helpful. And there was an article that I was reading this morning from some of the indie film distributors who have really managed to also turn their programming around on a dime and open up virtual online theaters. A lot of the programming that you see that is available through some of the indie distributors is a lot of it's foreign language or documentary, but they've all equaled or surpassed box office revenues that they would have anticipated, and they're able to get films out there a lot faster. So the whole conversation was, is this going to become a new way of life, especially in the short term? Every single one of the distributors has said that we don't want to preclude a theatrical experience, and we're hoping to be able to open films, but where films traditionally, especially foreign language art house documentaries, would open initially in New York and Los Angeles and then slowly roll out throughout the country, they've been able to get in everybody's living room or bedroom or iPad immediately. So they're seeing really good numbers, and it's just sort of breaking a mold that I think studios tried to implement back from day one. And because studios don't really have product right now, nor do they want to take things online necessarily, the indie model has really worked its way into the more mainstream, I would say. You know, I do know that something like Star Wars, which was planning on doing a big launch, they're launching online May 4th because they have a captive audience. So I think that things are changing in that regard. I don't think it's necessarily, at least in my industry, going to stay that way forever. But I think if you're going to capture audience, you have to start doing both. It was the same thing when distributors started releasing films, what they would call day and date on VOD and in the theater at the same time. And the studios were very much opposed to it because they thought that the VOD was going to cannibalize the theatrical. And in fact, everybody wanted the same time. So I think there's a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anybody else want to jump in before we move on to the next one? All right, well, we've got this next question from Michael. I think it's the big question. How are you estimating your cash flow with so many variables and unknowns, such as when concerts return or reducing salaries by X amount? Yeah, how are you operating under all of these unknowns when it comes to your cash flow?
We've developed our worst case scenario, and at this point, we actually aren't layering in anticipated revenue through either concerts or music school. Concerts we're playing for the rest of 2020 opportunistically. If we're able to put together a concert or concerts, that's great, and we'll layer in that revenue, but we're not projecting revenue. And the same thing for school.
Yeah, we've done the same thing. We have a couple different versions, but the worst case scenario is all of that we continue to refund all of the money we've taken in for courses through, you know, the end of May and all summer camps, and we don't earn another bit of revenue through the end of this fiscal year, and we continue with the expenses that we know we have. And what does that look like? That's our worst case scenario.
Yep.
So. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I'm going to move us on to the next question. Let's see. How does the payment process work for each of your organizations with paid Zoom classes? So are you using your own registration systems? How are you getting links out? How is that working?
We are using our own registration system. We get the links out our registration system allows us to send a group email to everyone who's registered for that class, and that's how we get the Zoom links out.
Okay, great. Paul or Susan? And Kim, I don't know if your question has another layer to that, but let us know in the Q&A. No, I think that might be it.
Okay. Great. Well, we have a couple other technology questions. I think this might have been addressed, but I'll just I'll repeat it in case anybody missed it. Do you guys have any thoughts on a live event versus an event where past performances and videos are uploaded? So live streaming versus just having something static on your website. I'm worried about the resources needed to implement a successful live feed.
We're doing both. We found people coming back to our to those events that we had live streamed, and they're watching them at a different time. We haven't put a lot of just pre-recorded. We haven't put any just pre-recorded concerts online yet.
We're doing both as well. The pre-recorded, well, actually they're not really pre-recorded. It's more that they're some of the shorter demonstrations that we're doing. We're recording them as they're done, and then we have those available to watch online for free. Our paid online courses, we're not making available at this time for people in the future. So it's only those short demonstrations that are available online.
Okay. This question's directed for you, Paul, to Swallow Hill. Dr. Jeffrey Mayen from Colorado Chord Company, Barbershop Chorus, is wondering, when things open up at Swallow Hill, do you guys rent concert hall space at your venue to others? And do you help promote these shows on your calendar or email lists?
We traditionally have not rented out our space to others. In the new world that we're opening up into, I don't know if that's going to change or not. The only kind of exception to that is we do host the Moth on a monthly basis. Every month, the Moth comes into our 300-seat hall, and we definitely promote those shows or those storytelling events. But no, we traditionally haven't rented out our venue.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. This next question is about outdoor experiences. I think, Susan, you addressed this a little bit earlier on. This question asks, do you anticipate that outdoor programs such as exhibits or concerts might have looser restrictions than programs in indoor confined spaces? At Dinosaur Ridge, many of our programs are outdoors, but often in groups that are packed together pretty closely. So any thoughts on how they could do spacing or follow any kind of social distancing requirements in that sense?
I mean, my understanding from we do another outdoor screening series in the village of Snowmass, where we offer free programming, or free screenings, I should say, on Saturday evenings for families on this great lawn that they have. So they have an inflatable screen. It's a pretty big, it's a pretty big area. It's an ice skating rink in the winter. We were averaging about 250 people a night last summer when we first launched the program. We're talking about continuing this summer. We've had to move the start date up to July 11th, I guess it is. But we still don't have mandates on how many people we're allowed to have on the grass. And I know that, as I said earlier, for the Wheeler Opera House, which is indoor, where we normally do programs, we still don't know what's going to be allowed there. And I know that for a lot of the other arts and culture groups here in Aspen, where there's a music tent and there's outdoor jazz performances and that sort of thing, we're still waiting for mandates on all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
The next question is, Paul, are you coordinating with your partners regarding summer concerts? And if so, what and how? Where are you at with your summer programming?
At this point, we haven't made any blanket decisions. We know other summer concert series have been canceled. I think at this, what we're doing is just waiting for a little bit more guidance from either the governor or the mayor. I would be shocked if we could run the Denver Botanic Gardens summer concert series. I would be shocked if we could do our summer concert series at 4 Mile Historic Park, or our patio shows at Clifford Still Museum, or other places. This summer, I think trying to bring together groups of more than 50, I think just isn't going to happen. But at the same time, we have not made the decision in conjunction with, say, the Denver Botanic Gardens to say we're canceling the series. But those decisions are probably coming up in the next few weeks.
Great, thank you.
This other question also has to do with a summer event. It's directed toward you, Rachel. You mentioned that your summer art market may or may not happen. I've seen a few online festivals, like through Facebook Live, that links to artists' websites with varied levels of success for artists selling their work. So if you proceed with your market, do you have any thoughts about elevating the experience and helping to push online shopping that would both benefit the artists and the league?
We're looking at those options right now, but we haven't made any decisions on that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Our next question is, let's see. I think we've pretty much answered the question of charging for programs and classes online. I'm not sure, Jody, when you joined the call, but we've kind of discussed, but this question maybe is more about pricing. how have you changed pricing at all for some online classes that you've offered now or are about to offer?
We charge on an hourly basis, and the online classes tend to be a little bit shorter in format because, again, our in-person classes are all in 3-hour blocks. So they work out to, I think they're working out to be perhaps overall slightly less expensive, but on an hourly basis, they're comparable. And that's because we feel like we're giving the same quality in that
And
online
content.
experience. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Thank you. This other question, we've only got 2 more that we haven't answered on the docket right now. So this one is asking about waivers. Have you needed to update your waivers for your performers or participants for live and recorded performances online? Are there any new liability and safety concerns with the new technology associated for participants or for performers?
Our performers have been doing their shows out of their living rooms or basements, and so no, we haven't done anything with an updated waiver.
Nor have we.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. So these 2 last questions might wrap it up unless anyone has some more to send our way. But they kind of both relate to something I'm going to pass along to you, Deborah. And one is just steps people are taking to encourage people to have a better perception of attending venues again. I imagine that as we get more information and things roll out, we will be working on that collectively in Colorado. Do you want to mention a few words about that, Deborah, of Arts Through It All, for example?
Well, I think generally everyone's touched on it. Paul mentioned, Susan, Rachel. It's about consumer confidence and rebuilding, not rebuilding, but what's going to bring people back. And I think you all of the organizations have done an amazing job at adapting, audience adapting, but it's consumer confidence, and that's way beyond just arts, culture, and the creative sector. So it's going to be, like all these things keep saying, it's a matter of health and safety first, the state, the city's health orders, determining, our issues for so many of our cultural organizations are social gatherings, the size of the capacity, and the number of people, whether it's capacity or numbers. So there's a lot in play. I think everyone's doing a great job at trying to preview this, and we don't have all those answers yet. It's the only answer I know at this point.
Great, thanks, Deborah. And I'm sure we'll be having another collective webinar to discuss that as we get more information, and we'll keep everybody posted. There was one last question in terms of SCFD distributions, and I would just like to say that if you have SCFD specific questions about funding, please contact Deborah and her great team at the SCFD offices. You can email them at scfd@scfd.org. And you can also look up their website at scfd.org and look at a list of their contacts there and their program managers. So those are very specific to SCFD. So it'd be better if one of the program managers got to you about those questions.
Yeah, I'll just add that the staff is very able and willing to answer questions related, and they're there for you. So please contact us. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we're out of fresh questions right now. So Deborah, I can pass it back to you. And please feel free to plug our upcoming webinar on Friday as well, if you'd like.
Right, great. Well, thank you all. I think, number one, the panelists here have such great insight, and they're being very strategic. And as we all know, this is all in play every day, every hour. So everyone's got great ideas. I think we're really thinking about audiences adapting, but to Paul's thoughts, it's that person-to-person contact. So call a donor, talk to them. It's not all online. It's how you make those connections. The organizations we've seen all across the street and across the country are turning on a dime, as Susan said, and pivoting online. I don't know if I'm going to use the word pivot after this thing, but everyone is, and it's quite remarkable to see. So it's, excuse me, it's just a combination of these things. I think we're learning as we go. the strength of Colorado is in the partnerships and collaborations. So I would encourage you all to reach out to members on the call today, ours at SCFD and CCI, Colorado Business Committee for the Arts, Jeanette at the Collaborative, the Office of Film, Television, Media. So, you know, this is a very collaborative state, and I think we are learning from each other as we go through this. I want to thank Paul and Susan and Rachel. Thank you for taking the time today, and for our masterful Kelly and Jeanette for managing the technology, and all just generally to the Office of Film, Television and Media, CCI, CBCA, Colorado Business Committee of the Arts, Collaborative, and SCFD. Again, it's a real collaborative effort. It has very good resources on their website for other webinars, and there's very good information for you all on there. They did one a couple weeks ago, which seems like light years ago, on the PPP program. And then we're hosting a webinar on Friday at 10 a.m. on mergers and dissolving cultural organizations. So it's how are there interesting partnerships amongst organizations that you might look at to think about. And again, that's going to be Friday from 10 to 10:30. We thank you for being here. We look forward to hearing more from you all. And if you have ideas of other webinars that you might feel would be beneficial, we'd love to talk about that. I think one we heard today is maybe just on technology as it's evolving. So thank you again to our panelists, to the participants, and you all stay safe and take care. Thank you.
Deborah, I have a quick question. Could you mention the Arts Through It All campaign?
Thank you, Jeanette. That's why Jeanette promised me. We have a joint campaign in the state called Arts Through It All, and this, I would recommend you go to the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts website where you can find it. It has 3 phases, so this is a public campaign for any arts organization to push out. There's a toolkit, templates online for you to use. It's a plug and play. You can put in your photographs and use it. There are 3 things that it does, and it's for your donors, general public, your audience. It is to, if you have tickets, please, it's a ticket, it's a ticket refund. Keep the tickets with the organization. That's number 1. Number 2 is donate to your favorite organization. And number 3 is support an artist, a local artist. So again, it's a campaign that any organization can use around the state that's available on the CBCA website. Thank you, Jeanette.
Great, thanks.
Great. Well, thank you all again, and be safe, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay well.